Good day, aviators. You're joining with the Aero Technicians YouTube channel, and here I am putting up a new series on Let's Ask. So, the purpose of this series is bringing aviation professionals into my channel and asking few questions about their experience and how to be one of them. So, today we have a special guest. He's a first officer in one of the biggest airliners in Europe. So, without further ado, let's go to my intro and go have a chat with him. Este aviation six pack at the aircraft and so ඒ වීඩියෝ එකට මගේ තව ප්‍රශ්නයක් So there you go, my intro. So let's get to the video. Welcome Tim, welcome to my channel. So let's start off. Can you tell a bit about yourself?
Oh, hi Dino. My name is Tim. I'm 23 years old. I'm from Malta and I'm an airline pilot in Europe. My kind of love for aviation started when I was about 10 years old. I started joining my dad and my grandfather back then in air shows, attending air shows in Malta and also abroad. And so that interest started slowly from there. And it's at about 16 years old where I started making the first steps to become a pilot. I began my flight training back at home in Malta with one of the local flying schools, and at 17 years old I got my private pilot's license. A few months after getting the license in summer of 2017, I then joined my flight school to work there to gain experience as a flight operations officer. Basically, it helped with booking training flights for the students, slots, so the particular times where they can operate from the airport, and other duties, working with the maintenance colleagues when airplanes have to go in for maintenance, the duties that has to be done, and other administrative stuff with also the local authorities. In the meantime, I also began my theoretical part of the course, the Airline Transport Pilot's License exams. Basically 14 exams which help you to gain the knowledge that you require to apply for an airline, and the commercial license which allows you to do that. And at the same time, flying for experience. You have to build a certain number of hours to qualify for the next step in your training, and that's what I did at the same time. Once I completed that, I then did a small course which allows you to fly at night. It's a very short course, you can do it in a few days. And then also an introduction into instrument flying. It's basically flying on instruments when you have no visual reference outside the airplane. Once that was completed, which we were saying 2019, so 2 years after I begun, I then started the commercial pilot's license in 2020. Had to take a little bit of a break because of the COVID situation back then, and delayed just by a few months, and managed to finish in summer of 2020. So in total about 3 years, 3 to 4 years to finish everything. But obviously with the current situation, then I did not apply for an airline because quite a few airlines were grounded. So I decided to either continue working as I did, which was with my flight school, or else do something a little bit different. And so I decided to become a flight instructor to teach the private pilot's license, which I had learned a few years ago, to new students. And I did that for about a year and a half before then making the next step to join the airlines. I joined my current airline in 2022. Beginning of 2022, I started seeing that things were slowly improving from what was going on a little bit in the past, and I said, okay, this might be a good step to make the next step and achieve the goal that I was obviously aiming for. And I basically did that. In February of 2022, I got the result that I passed the assessment. And then in April of 2022, I then began the type rating on the 737, and then by August of 2022, I then started commercial flying. I've been flying ever since. So it's going pretty well. I can't complain. Apart from the flying, apart from the job, I do enjoy following football, Formula One, going out with friends, to relax and have a good time. Basically, that's about it. That's me.
So, Tim, one of the frequent questions I get in my channel is where to start, how to go from zero to where you are at. What is the process of becoming a pilot? Well, what are the stages of becoming a pilot? Would you mind explaining a bit about that, the stages and where you should start?
So the process of becoming an airline pilot has a few steps. Not gonna lie. The first step is beginning with the private pilot's license. Is basically the first ever license that you can do to begin this process. It's done on a small airplane, on a single engine piston aircraft. So basically a light aircraft with one engine, and you'd basically learn the basics of flying, which you will keep those basics throughout all your training, even when you come to an airline flying jets, for example. So you begin with that, and there's a certain number of hours. You need to do a couple of exams as well, an English language proficiency check, just to check your level of English, and other requirements during that particular course. And that course varies on how long you can take, depending on the flight school, depending on on yourself. But generally speaking, you can usually finish it between 6 months to 8 months, usually. Once that is completed, then you have kind of two steps to do, which you can do at the same time. You have the airline transport pilot's license exams, which are basically 13 exams leading you to the commercial kind of environment. So the same subjects that you studied in the private pilot's license, which I just mentioned before, but now they are in a little bit of more detail, which is to be expected. 13 exams with regards to all subjects that are required, be it principles of flight, so understanding how an aircraft flies, how an aircraft operates, and also meteorology, weather, how it is developed, how it varies from season to season, and so on and so forth. So there's a wider range of subjects to study, and also the level is a little bit deeper. Once that is completed, you can also do at the same time flying experience. You need to build up a certain amount of hours in your name, basically to log, so that you show that you've done a certain amount of experience to apply for the next stage of the course. You do also the night flying, as the name suggests. You do night flying to accustom yourself to flying at night, the orientations of seeing literally darkness outside of the cockpit, and also the lights, understanding and how to interpret what the instruments are telling you, and to rely on those instruments rather than the senses that are being given by your body, which might signify something different. You have that. Then you have a small course, which is an introduction to flying on instruments. You know how to interpret the instruments, what they are telling you, what indications could be maybe a little bit faulty, and how to rely on other indications that can kind of back up what you are thinking. The next stage is the biggest stage of all, is the commercial pilot's license. It's basically the last step, so to speak, to then go for the airlines, basically. It's basically to enhance your flying, to improve your flying. Any kind of deficiencies or weaknesses that you had in the past will be addressed now in this course to improve your level of flying. If it is to follow speed, heading, altitude, how to communicate on the radio with the controllers, and generally speaking, just to improve your level of knowledge, both theoretically and also practically as well. You will also fly an aircraft with two engines. So up to until this point, you'd have flown a single engine aircraft, so basically an aircraft with one engine, and now you'll fly an aircraft with two engines. Therefore, it will be called a multi-engine airplane. And understanding, the effects of flying with two engines. If one engine goes, wrong, and you have to fly with the remaining engine, how does that feel? And so on and so forth. So that will help you lead up to the airline goal that most people would like to do. And you also have the course, which is happening all at the same time. So it's three courses kind of happening at once, so to speak, where you're flying on instruments, flying procedures, flying different approaches into different airports, how they use certain ways, because things vary from airport to airport, from country to country, and you will be exposed to more of these as you go along in the course. In the simulator, especially, where you can practice certain problems of the airplane, such as engine failure, avionics failure, and so on and so forth, to expose yourself and to gain as much as possible before you go for the big jets. After completing this, you'd have then become a commercial pilot. You'd have the necessary requirements to apply for an airline, kind of. Up until this point, you would have flown as a single pilot. So you'd have been taught how to fly this airplane with two engines, not very big, so it maybe weighs maximum 2,000 kilograms, not more. And you are able to operate that airplane on your own and earn money at the same time, because that's why you'll get a commercial license. So from your flying, you earn a wage, basically. However, airlines work a little bit differently. You have at least two pilots in the flight deck. And so there's another course, unfortunately, yet another course, because the courses never keep on, they always invent something new. And you have what is called a multi-crew course. It's basically a course for each and every pilot to learn how to fly with another pilot. In my case, flying with a captain and learning how to assist the captain, both duties when I am flying and he is not flying, and vice versa as well. When he's flying and I'm flying, how can I assist him as much as possible, both on the ground and in the air eventually? How can I help in the safety and efficient operation of the flight, basically? And that varies from airline to airline and airplane to airplane. You have certain requirements, certain procedures that vary, which will be addressed later on when you actually join an airline. Finally, and this will be the absolute last of it, you also have a small course which was introduced recently with regards to certain attitudes with regards to the aircraft. In the previous years, there were unfortunate accidents where aircraft lost control due to certain positions in the flight, be it a nose-up attitude or nose-down attitude or a bank to the left or to the right. And this small course, a very short course, which is completed within a few days, where it addresses this kind of training to new pilots and recurrent pilots who are already in a job now, how to get out of these kind of situations, basically. And these are done both prior to your airline training and after you join the airline, because then they will be specific to that particular airplane that you are flying for that airline. So all these courses that I mentioned, you are finally ready to apply for an airline. You'll have all the requirements you need to apply for an airline. Be advised, obviously, that every airline has its certain own requirements. You can have certain airlines that are requiring a certain number of hours and a certain education level. But that, again, varies from airline to airline. But generally speaking, what I've mentioned just now is the absolute minimum that you need to apply for an airline job and be successful in joining that airline, having these basic requirements.
So the third question is, what are the qualifications you require, academic qualifications you require to become a pilot? Let's just say, in order to, as you said, private pilot license, what are the qualifications? So do you have any qualifications, or what would you require?
So qualification-wise, there isn't an exact, requirement where you need these subjects to be accepted or even successful. There are many guys with different, subject, different backgrounds. So speaking about myself, I took maths and physics because I was only good at maths and physics. I was not good at languages, so I had to choose something, and that was that. Um, and it did help a little bit just to get an idea of what to expect during the training, because you will have certain subjects which you will use a little bit of maths and physics, but nothing on the level of college maths and college physics, so to speak. So it's very basic with regards to those subjects. What you will have with most flight training schools, they do these pre-entry tests just to have an idea of the person's level of maths and physics. Just to have a gauge of how the student will progress. Maybe he might struggle in certain subjects of the theoretical part of the courses, just for them to have an idea. Again, it's not like a pass or a fail. You might have some flight schools who do have certain benchmarks that you have to reach in these tests in the pre-entry before you're actually going for these courses. And if you don't reach them, they might not accept you, unfortunately. So you might have that, but then you can have other flight schools who just do it just for their own kind of research, just to have an idea of how the student will progress throughout the course. And if they can preempt any difficulties, they will try to address them as much as possible. So as such, there's nothing written down that you need to have maths and physics. You can have, let's say, chemistry or biology or just languages. So you can choose what you want. Just be expected that you will have to do a little bit of maths and a little bit of physics in the theoretical training. With regards to languages, English is the language to be used in aviation, so you are expected to know that, and you will have an assessment in regards to your language proficiency. And based on how well you do, that has a certain validity. You could have either the test valid for life, so you don't have to do it again, or else depending on how proficient or not proficient or you are, you have to do the proficiency every couple of years, every five, I believe, for 4 to 5 years, you'd have to repeat that. And obviously, you can always improve on the result that you got in the past.
So, Tim, the next question is, what are the most crucial skills relevant when succeeding in this career as a pilot?
In any job, the employer is basically looking for an overall package in a person, basically, so that you're able to get on with your peers and at the same time do the job as well as you can, as best as you can, in a professional manner and in a safe and timely fashion. And that's what an airline wants from you, basically. They want you that you get along with your colleagues, so your captain, your cabin crew, because ultimately you're a team. You're not flying that airplane on your own. You're flying with five other people at least, maybe more. So they want you to make sure that you get along with the other person, especially when you may not like the other person. You have to put your personal views aside and just be professional and get the job done and bring those passengers or whatever commercial operation that you're doing from point A to point B in a safe, timely manner, efficient, and professional way possible. And that's what they want from a person's kind of qualities. From the job qualities, they want you to make sure that you follow procedures, that you do it as you're being told, as you are trained to do, that you have the theoretical knowledge and background to make good judgments, because situations always change due to various reasons, that you can use that knowledge that you have learned, and in conjunction with the other person who is beside you on the left seat, and come up with a good plan. That's what they want. They do not want a pilot who's just good at flying. He can remember all the manuals of the airplane that he's flying, and not be a people's person. They do not want that, or vice versa. They want an all-round guy who can fly the airplane well within its limits and safe, and at the same time get along with his colleagues and do the job properly. That's what they want. They do not want either side of the spectrum. They want some guy in the middle, to make it good for them, basically. Because if you're not able to do that, then it's a little bit of a problem for yourself and obviously for them as well.
So the next question is one of my personal favorites. Walk us through a day in a life of an airline pilot.
We can either fly earlys or lates, meaning you'd have to report at the airport, let's say 5 a.m., 6 a.m., or else in the afternoon instead at about 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. Coming from a few days flying on an early shift, I had a flight, let's say, at 5 o'clock in the morning, so I have to report at the airport at 5 a.m. So what I would normally do is wake up, let's say, 3 o'clock, half 3, and have breakfast, then check my company tablet and see if there are any changes to the scheduled flight that I was supposed to do, because sometimes you do have a little bit of changes now and again, and check that everything is okay. Get ready, get dressed in my uniform, and then catch the public transport to the airport to meet with the crew, meet with the captain, and meet with the cabin crew. With the captain, would have certain discussions on how the day will progress, who's flying certain flights, because we can either fly 2 very long flights, so to speak, or else 4 short flights, and we decide who will take what. Generally speaking, the first officer in my case, I will start the first flight and take the last flight, and then he would take the middle flights if it's a 4-flight day. If it's a 2-flight day, I would usually start first, and then the captain would fly second, basically, and would also discuss anything that can hamper kind of the day. If it's weather, how much fuel we're going to decide for the first flight, any difficulties, anything that we'd like to mention to each other, and then eventually have a briefing with the cabin crew. Then we'd then go to the airplane. The captain, if he is not flying, would check the exterior of the airplane, whilst I would prepare the aircraft from inside, get everything set up. In the meantime, the cabin crew are doing their own duties, getting the cabin ready so that the passengers board, and then go off on our journey wherever we're supposed to go, anywhere in Europe, basically. Normally the day can vary. You can either have a, let's say, a 4 or 5 hour day, depending on the destination and depending on how many flights you do. But you could either finish, let's say, start at 5 o'clock and then finish at 12, or else start at 5 or 6 and finish at 4 in the afternoon. So it does vary depending on where you go. Once and then we would have landed and we are ready from the day. We fill out the paperwork that we have to do through our tablet. Not really paperwork anymore, but the stuff that we have to fill out regarding the day of the flights. And then once everything is ready and submitted, would either leave the aircraft in a state where the next crew can take it, or else shut it down completely, and then secure the aircraft, and then leave the airport, and then we're ready from our day, and then we just basically go back home. That's about it.
So, Tim, the last question. What's the best bit of advice you can give to someone who's looking to start a career as an airline pilot?
Enjoy it as much as you can. That applies for any job, but especially this one, because it's so dynamic. It can change so many times, and leading up to it, you can have moments and difficult moments where you say, I want to give up, I want to stop because it's not worth it anymore. Just always remember that that it's something to enjoy, it's something to be proud of, it's something to feel privileged and to not be taken for granted, and enjoy it. That's the best advice I was given by my instructors and my peers during my kind of flight training leading up to my airline job, and I will say it once again. Enjoy it. It's something surreal. It changes quite frequently. It's not always the same day every day. There will be times where you want to give up, as I mentioned, I had moments in my training, so it's not uncommon, but always remind yourself that, listen, this is what I want to do, this is what I feel I am best at, so just do it, and you shouldn't have any issues as long as you enjoy it, and that's the most important thing. It's as long as you're in your happy place. 100%.
There you go, guys, that's a wrap. And if you got any questions, please drop them down in the comment section below. I'll try to answer myself. If not, I'll get Tim to answer you guys. So, and again, Tim, thanks a lot. It's been a great pleasure. And also I have to mention, when I was an aircraft technician, Tim was one of the interns, and I had the privilege of working with him. And from the day one, Tim was very career focused, and also he had a to-do attitude, and he was well disciplined. So from the first day, he knew what he's gonna be. He wanted to be a pilot, and I see he have achieved his dream. And I would like to wish him all the best in his future endeavors. He's the best man for the job. I mean, like, he has technical background, he knows about aircraft, he always wanted to know how system works. So he was very promising. So good luck, and thanks a lot for coming into my channel. As you guys can see, there's two relevant videos. One of them is an airline pilot versus an aircraft engineer. What are the differences, how to become either one of them, and all sort of information. He's an airline pilot from the Middle East, so go check out his video as well. A lot of information, more the information, better and more clearer you'll be when you try to choose your career path. And on this side, he's a lightweight aircraft pilot, also a bit of different experience. Please go check out, and I hope you enjoy. So I'll bring you guys another video pretty soon. Till then, keep fixing.